Comrades, welcome to today's episode. Uh, we are continuing with my prison story. And in the last episode, I narrated how I finally had my day in court and how the Ministre Public, the prosecutor, proposed 8 years of incarceration for me on allegations that I had participated in an insurrectionary movement, the M23. Before the judge could deliver his ruling, there was a general transfer of all court officials. So he was also transferred. In the procedures of military courts in Congo, a new judge decides whether they will carry on from where the previous judge left or whether the process will begin afresh. So when the news of that general transfer of court officials was announced, we really were devastated because we didn't know, first and foremost, when the new judge would report. We didn't know what to expect from him. When a new judge comes, he chooses which files he or she will handle first. So there was a possibility of our file not being among the first files to be handled, and whether the judge would decide that we begin afresh or whether he or she would pick up from where the previous judge had left off. So we were left in a limbo, but fortunately it didn't take long for the new judge to be announced, so we got to know him. Unlike every other life in our societies, the lobbying began. Now, we were at a disadvantage because unlike other prisoners, most of whom are soldiers that have connections with these judges, because the judges themselves are soldiers, so it's normal to find that a certain officer knows the incoming judge, and everybody lobbies to have their file fixed among the first files. So as we were, there wondering what will come next, there was a prisoner. He was a police officer who was sharing ideas with one of our colleagues, Mr. Jerani, and he told him that he had a friend who was also a prisoner who knew the new judge. So Jerani came and told me that there is someone who can help us with connections. He knows another prisoner that is well known to the judge. Now, because we had spent almost 7 years trying every available option, trying all connections we would think of, engaging very powerful people, and everything had not worked, I was really not persuaded that the prisoner would link me to another prisoner, then that prisoner would then introduce me to the judge, and that anything would come out. But upon the insistence of my other colleagues, Jirani, Joseph, Agre, and Kapesha, I reluctantly accepted to talk to this prisoner. And this prisoner was a drunkard. You know, he was someone that was always going to the mess to drink. That's what he was known for. So I just went to talk to him to see what he had to say. And he told me that he had a friend who was also a prisoner. That friend of his was a major, and they had served together in Bukavu. It's a province in Congo. And that he was also a judicial officer in the military. So he was well known to most of those officers. So he told me he can introduce me to him as a friend, and that major would help us. So I said, okay, let's try our luck. So he introduced me to the major, and we talked. Of course, I knew how Congolese operate. They will always ask for money on every small thing. But I was a bit surprised when I talked to this major, and he told me that he was not asking anything from me. He didn't want anything from me, and that he hoped that the good turn that he would do for us, maybe God would reward him for it. So he told me that he had trained with the judge that was coming, and therefore the judge would definitely look favorably upon his request. So he fixed an appointment with the judge, and we went and met the judge and explained to him how far the case had gone. And our request was that he considers our file among the first files that he would handle. So when he heard that we had already done 7 years in jail without ever being, adjudged whether we are guilty or innocent, he was touched, and he promised that he would fix our file among the first files that he would handle. So we waited. I think after like 2 weeks, we were then called to court. So when he called us, we had requested him that he calls both files, mine and the file of my colleagues. Because I was charged with 7 people, my colleagues were a group of 17. So he said that he would first handle ours of the 7 because we were fewer. And once he disposed of that, then he would handle the file of the 17. And he was a bit different from these other judges that we were used to, because one, he was always punctual, not in the sense of getting to court at 9, but at least he was always the first. He would begin, his courts would begin at around 11:30 or midday, something that was very rare in the normal court processes that we were accustomed to. So seeing a judge, begin his sessions at noon was something of a phenomenon. And unlike the other courts, everybody was always there. there was no room for, absenteeism from his other judges. So we kicked off at quite a pace, and he decided that we would go back to the presentations because he wanted to have his personal appreciation of our presentations. He said that he couldn't just read the case about what the previous judge had written. He would have to form his own opinion, hearing us verbatim. So we once again were asked to present our case, and which we did. And quickly we got to the plaidoirie. I was still proposed the 8 years that I had been proposed previously. And after a month, he gave his ruling, which was in December 2021. At the end of December, I think it was 30th December 2021. And he ruled that I would get the 8 years that had been proposed to me. In the Congolese justice system, one's sentence begins the day one is arrested. So it was 8 years beginning 2014, October 2014. So that meant that I still had 8 months to go. But before he could give his ruling, he actually told me that he was going to give me the 8 years, which was approximately the time I had already done in jail. Not because he was convinced that I was guilty, because there was no proof to that effect, but to guard himself against a possibility of my suing the Congolese government for having detained me for such a long time while I was innocent. So he couldn't give me an innocent verdict. He had to find me guilty, but give me the time I had already spent, so that if I am to sue, then they would say, no, but you were guilty and you were sentenced. And that's how I got 8 years. So in February, he then began the fire of my colleagues, because I was supposed to be getting out in October. And we had hoped that by October, all of us would be through. But the fire of my colleagues will be the topic of our next episode. So for today, we break off at this point. Thank you for following. Stay tuned. Those that have not yet subscribed, please do so and invite colleagues. There is so much more that we will be sharing. May God bless you.